Tensions between global powers are reaching new heights as recent developments in international relations underscore the fragility of diplomatic ties. On February 14, 2025, China accused Australia of deliberate provocation in the South China Sea, a maneuver that highlights the precarious nature of regional security. This accusation follows Australia's increased military presence in the contested waters, which Beijing views as a direct challenge to its territorial claims. The South China Sea, a vital maritime route for global trade, has long been a flashpoint in Sino-Australian relations, and this latest incident could escalate tensions further. In the midst of these geopolitical shifts, U.S. President Donald Trump is reportedly banking on a trade war with China to revive the American economy. Analysts, however, caution that this approach may backfire. Trump's administration has implemented a series of tariffs on Chinese imports, framing them as necessary steps to restore the U.S. manufacturing sector. Yet experts argue that these tariffs, while appealing to nationalist sentiments, may not yield the desired economic benefits and could instead contribute to inflationary pressures that hurt American consumers. Melanie Brusseler, a political economist, articulated these concerns in a recent opinion piece, emphasizing that tariffs could serve as a regressive tax on middle and working-class Americans. While tariffs can theoretically boost domestic manufacturing, in practice they often increase costs for consumers and may not lead to the expected investments in new production facilities, Brusseler noted. This perspective resonates with a growing body of evidence suggesting that the decline of American manufacturing cannot simply be attributed to competition from China. Rather, it reflects broader economic trends that require more nuanced solutions. Complicating matters further, Trump has expressed a desire to engage in nuclear arms control talks with Russia and China, hoping to cut defense spending significantly. During a press briefing, he stated, "There's no reason for us to be building brand new nuclear weapons. We're all spending a lot of money that we could be spending on other things that are actually hopefully much more productive." However, both Russia and China have historically resisted U.S. overtures for nuclear disarmament, with Beijing reiterating that Washington must first reduce its larger arsenal. As the U.S. grapples with these complex issues, the ramifications of its foreign policy decisions are becoming increasingly clear. The interplay between trade wars, military posturing, and nuclear negotiations creates a volatile environment, one that could have lasting impacts on global stability. In this context, both the Biden administration and Trump's potential return to power will shape the future of American foreign policy. Looking ahead, the international community is left to ponder whether these aggressive stances will yield constructive outcomes or merely exacerbate existing tensions. As countries navigate the treacherous waters of diplomacy, the need for strategic dialogue and collaboration has never been more pressing. If history teaches us anything, it is that the path to peace is often fraught with challenges, but it remains a necessity for a stable global order. The recent passing of Gyalo Thondup, the elder brother of the 14th Dalai Lama and a significant figure in the Tibetan exile community, marks a poignant moment in the ongoing struggle for Tibetan autonomy. Thondup, who died at the age of 97 in Kalimpong, India, had been a linchpin in the dialogue between Tibetan leaders and the Chinese government, making his departure a notable turning point in the Tibetan cause. Thondup's life was deeply intertwined with the history of modern Tibet. After fleeing Tibet in 1952, a year after the People's Liberation Army's occupation of Lhasa, he became a prominent advocate for Tibetan rights. Initially, his efforts focused on achieving total independence for Tibet. Over time, however, the stance evolved towards seeking substantial autonomy within China's framework. His negotiation efforts, though stalled for decades, provided the Tibetan community with a voice and a connection to the international stage, garnering support for their plight. As analysts have pointed out, Thondup's death signifies the end of an era for Tibetan exiles. His unique experiences and insights into negotiating with Beijing will be sorely missed, particularly as the exiled community faces a critical juncture. The Dalai Lama is expected to announce plans for the selection of his successor when he turns 90 this July, adding another layer of uncertainty to the future of Tibetan leadership and advocacy. Thondup's passing comes at a particularly sensitive time in Tibetan politics, with the dynamics of Tibetan leadership and their relationship with China in flux. His contributions to the Tibetan cause extended beyond mere political advocacy. He played a vital role in fostering a sense of unity among exiled Tibetans and creating a framework for international diplomatic engagement regarding Tibet. In reflecting on Thondup's legacy, it is important to recognize the broader geopolitical implications of his work. The Tibetan struggle for autonomy has always been intertwined with international relations, particularly as global powers navigate their interests in the region. His death may herald a shift in how the Tibetan cause is represented and pursued on the world stage, particularly as younger leaders emerge, potentially changing the tactics and strategies employed in their advocacy. Looking ahead, the future of the Tibetan movement is uncertain. With the Dalai Lama's impending announcement regarding succession, the community may be on the brink of a significant transformation. The questions surrounding leadership direction and the nature of negotiations with Beijing will undoubtedly shape the Tibetan cause in the years to come. As the world watches, the legacy of Gyalo Thondup will continue to influence the Tibetan struggle and its place within the larger narrative of human rights and autonomy movements globally. In a landscape marked by rising tensions and economic uncertainty, former President Donald Trump's approach to trade and foreign policy is once again in the spotlight. His strategy, particularly towards China, has sparked significant debate among economists and political analysts, with many arguing that his aggressive stance may do more harm than good for the U.S. economy. As the U.S. continues to grapple with the complexities of global trade dynamics, the implications of Trump's policies could reshape the economic landscape for years to come. Trump's recent imposition of 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum imports, primarily targeting Canada, Mexico, and China, signals a renewed commitment to a trade war, particularly against China. This move is seen by many as an attempt to restore a bygone era of American manufacturing, an era that has been in decline for decades. The statistics are telling. Manufacturing employment in the U.S. has plummeted from 32% of the workforce in 1953 to just over 8% today. Politicians from both sides of the aisle have often pointed to China's rise as a primary culprit for this decline, framing trade protectionism as a potential solution to revive American industry. However, experts warn that tariffs are not a panacea. While they might theoretically bolster domestic producers by making foreign goods more expensive, they also act as a regressive tax on consumers, particularly affecting middle and working-class Americans. Melanie Brusseler, a political economist, argues that the reality of tariffs is far more complex than their proponents suggest. Tariffs work better on paper than they do in practice. She notes, emphasizing that they can lead to inflation and increased production costs without guaranteeing that manufacturers will invest in expanding domestic production. The Biden administration has largely upheld Trump's tariffs, adding new ones on Chinese-made electric vehicles and critical technology components. This bipartisan consensus on protectionism reflects a broader narrative that blames China's economic ascent for American woes. Yet as Trump escalates his trade threats, including a possible 60% tariff on all Chinese imports, the situation risks backfiring. China's strategic responses, including targeted tariffs on American imports, could further entrench economic challenges for both nations. As the trade war unfolds, the potential for a deflationary spiral in China raises alarm bells about the broader global economy. With China's economic growth already slowing, the combination of the trade spat and domestic challenges could lead to significant repercussions not just for China, but for the U.S. and the global market as well. The Economist recently highlighted fears that persistent economic pressures in China could spiral into a more severe economic crisis. In light of these challenges, a recent initiative at the Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies (SAIS) aims to foster a more nuanced understanding of U.S.-China relations. The newly launched Institute for America-China and the Future of Global Affairs seeks to add depth to public discussions about the economic and political complexities at play, as prominent scholars and policymakers convene to explore these issues.
The goal is to chart a path forward that balances national security with economic cooperation. The stakes are undeniably high. Trump's return to power could mean a continuation of combative trade policies that many fear will exacerbate the economic distress felt by everyday Americans. As the U.S. grapples with its position in an increasingly multipolar world, the fundamental question remains: can a more constructive approach to trade foster the economic revival that both sides of the political spectrum claim to desire? Looking ahead, the future of U.S.-China relations will likely be determined by how effectively policymakers can navigate the turbulent waters of nationalism, economic strategy, and global interdependence. The ongoing dialogue surrounding these issues will be critical in shaping not just the economies of both nations but also the broader framework of international relations in the years to come. On February 14, 2025, the Chinese Foreign Ministry hosted a regular press conference led by spokesperson Gui Jiaquan, who addressed a diverse range of topics from international sports diplomacy to military cooperation and nuclear disarmament. This conference served as a platform not only for China's foreign policy positions but also for its reflections on current global events. As the 9th Asian Winter Games concluded in Harbin, Gui emphasized the significance of the event beyond mere athletic competition. He remarked, "The inspiration of Dream of Winter Love among Asia will not end," highlighting how the Games fostered unity among countries. The participation of over 1,200 athletes from 34 nations, including first-time entrants like Cambodia and Saudi Arabia, indicates a growing interest in winter sports across Asia. This shift, according to Guo, points to the potential of the ice and snow economy as a new growth driver for the region, reinforcing the idea that sports can bridge divides and promote peace. In response to U.S. President Donald Trump's announcement of increased military sales to India, Gui expressed concerns about the implications of such actions. He stated no one should make China an issue in the relations and cooperation between countries, asserting that geopolitical rivalry should not disrupt peace in the Asia-Pacific region. His comments reflect a broader apprehension regarding the escalation of military alliances that could lead to instability. Hua also detailed the outcomes of Foreign Minister Wang Yi's recent visit to the United Kingdom, which marked a significant step in improving China-UK relations after a decade. Following a high-level meeting with UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, both nations agreed to enhance strategic dialogue and cooperation across various sectors, including energy technology and education. This visit drew the roadmap for bilateral exchanges and cooperation going forward, Hua noted, signaling optimism about the future trajectory of these relations amidst global uncertainties. Turning to nuclear disarmament, Hua responded to Trump's proposal for a trilateral meeting with China and Russia to discuss cutting defense budgets. He highlighted the disproportionate military expenditure of the U.S., which accounted for 40% of global military spending in 2024, urging Washington to lead by example. Nuclear disarmament must follow the basic principle of maintaining global strategic stability and undiminished security for all, he said, positioning China as a proponent of multilateral arms control while maintaining a defensive military posture. The conference also touched on the enduring partnership between China and Russia. Coinciding with the 75th anniversary of the Treaty of Friendship between the two nations, Hua reaffirmed that their cooperation is not aimed at any third parties and emphasized the importance of maintaining a strong partnership despite external pressures. Lastly, Hua addressed the recent military discussions between India and the U.S., noting that alliances should not target China or jeopardize regional stability. The Asia-Pacific is not an arena for geopolitical games, he reiterated, advocating for a cooperative approach that enhances peace and prosperity in the region. As these dialogues unfold, they highlight the intricate balance of power in global politics. The outcomes of these discussions and the evolving dynamics among nations will undoubtedly shape the geopolitical landscape in the coming years. The commitment to strategic communication and mutual respect between major powers will be critical in navigating the complexities of modern international relations. In a developing diplomatic conflict,
The United States and China are at odds over who should take the lead in drafting United Nations Security Council resolutions on Afghanistan. This disagreement, which has escalated since the Trump administration assumed control of the U.S. seat in early 2025, signals a potential shift in the balance of power within the UN and indicates a broader trend of increasing tensions between the two nations in multilateral settings. At the heart of the dispute is the question of which country will act as the Security Council's penholder for Afghanistan. In UN terminology, penholders are responsible for initiating and drafting resolutions, providing them with considerable influence over the Council's approach to various issues, including peace operations and sanctions. Historically, the United States, along with France and the United Kingdom, has maintained a firm grip on this privilege, with the U.S. holding the pen on 6 country-specific issues in 2024 alone. China has been cautious in its UN engagements, having previously co-drafted resolutions with the U.S. on North Korea but never assuming the penholder role for any country-specific agenda. This changed in the latter half of 2024 when China expressed its desire to take the lead on Afghanistan, a move that sparked immediate backlash from the United States. The U.S. has consistently opposed any increase in China's influence within the UN, a sentiment echoed across the political spectrum in Washington. As China seeks to assert itself more firmly within UN frameworks, it has indicated a willingness to work collaboratively, offering to co-hold the pen with either Pakistan or South Korea. The motivation behind China's bid is multifaceted. Afghanistan presents a unique opportunity for China to engage with the Taliban and potentially stabilize a region it views as a risk for terrorism, while also eyeing the country's rich mineral resources. The standoff reached a boiling point recently when China and Pakistan circulated a draft resolution to extend the UN assistance mission in Afghanistan UNAMA for another year, which the US and South Korea countered with their draft emphasizing human rights, particularly for women and girls. While the differences between the two proposals may seem minor, the real contention lies in control and influence over the drafting process itself. The US-Korean proposal hints at a more critical stance toward the Taliban, while the Chinese-Pakistani version aims for continuity without significant changes. Diplomats have noted that the ongoing impasse not only complicates the Security Council's ability to confirm penholders for Afghanistan but also obscures the broader question of how the UN can effectively engage with the Taliban, which remains wary of international scrutiny. The Taliban's growing discomfort with its isolation could hinder any chance of constructive dialogue, further complicating efforts to address pressing humanitarian needs in Afghanistan. The implications of this diplomatic row extend beyond the immediate issue of Afghanistan. It reflects a growing trend of Sino-American rivalry within the UN that could shape future multilateral engagements and frameworks. As the Trump administration has taken a more isolationist stance, withdrawing from various international agreements and organizations, China's increasing assertiveness may alter the dynamics of global governance. Experts caution that if both nations remain entrenched in their positions, the Security Council could face significant paralysis, impacting crucial discussions on global security and humanitarian issues. The current situation may serve as a precursor to more profound geopolitical shifts as both nations navigate their roles in an increasingly multipolar world. In conclusion, the US-China standoff over the Afghanistan issue at the UN is emblematic of broader tensions likely to characterize international relations in the coming years. As both nations vie for influence, the need for a cooperative approach to global challenges has never been more critical. Observers will watch closely to see how this situation unfolds, as it may set the tone for future interactions not just in the UN but across the international landscape.